There's a number you check more often than your own heartbeat, not your weight, not your blood pressure, your bank balance, or worse, the number you imagine you'd need to finally feel okay. And here's the strange part. No matter what that number is, the moment you get close to it, it moves. You got the raise, you got the bigger house, you're earning more at 52 than you ever dreamed of at 32. And somehow you still wake up at 3 a.m. doing the math, feeling like you're behind. I want to say something the financial industry will never put in a commercial. They don't actually want you to feel like enough. Enough doesn't sell. Every ad, every feed, every neighbor's new truck in the driveway is engineered to keep that number moving, because a person who feels content is a person who stops buying. And so you've spent years, maybe decades, chasing a target that was designed to never be reached. But here's what almost nobody tells you, especially after 40. The problem in front of you is probably not a money problem. You may not need to earn more at all. You might need something the industry can't sell you, and that's exactly why they stay quiet about it. Let me show you the blueprint. Let me start with a distinction that once you see it, you can't unsee, because this is where most people get it wrong. And they get it wrong for 30 straight years without ever noticing. There are two words we use like they mean the same thing: rich and wealthy. They don't mean the same thing. They're not even close. And the gap between them is the gap between the life you think you're chasing and the life you actually want. Rich is simple. Rich is the money you have available to spend. It's the paycheck that clears, the credit limit, the ability to walk into a dealership and drive out in something new. Rich is what you can buy. It's visible. It sits in the driveway. It hangs in the closet. And because it's visible, it's the thing everyone measures, including you, when you look at your neighbor and quietly run the numbers in your head. Wealthy is the opposite. Wealthy is the money you don't spend. It's the investment sitting untouched. It's the cushion in the account you never brag about because nobody can see it. Wealthy isn't what you can buy. It's what you've chosen not to. And here's the part that matters at your age more than it ever did at 25. Wealthy is what buys you independence. The ability to wake up on a Tuesday and not be afraid. The power to say no to a job, a client, a situation, because you don't need the money badly enough to swallow your dignity for it. Now sit with the uncomfortable truth underneath those two words. They often move in opposite directions. The richer someone looks, the less wealthy they frequently are, because everything that makes them look rich is money that left their hands forever. Let me make this concrete. Imagine two men, both 55, both living on the same street in the same Ohio suburb. Call them David and Frank. David earns $240,000 a year. He looks like the success story. New Tahoe every 3 years, $720 a month, leased so it's always current. A $680,000 house with a mortgage he refinanced upward twice to pull cash out. The boat. The country club. The kids' weddings he paid for in full because that's what a successful man does. David earns $250,000 a year. And if his income stopped this Friday, he could survive, maybe, 90 days before the whole structure cracked. David is rich. David is not wealthy. David, at 55, is one bad quarter away from terror, and he smiles at the barbecue like a man who has it figured out. Frank earns $95,000, less than half of David. Frank drives a paid-off 2017 Camry with 90,000 miles on it. His house is smaller, and the mortgage has 11 years left. But Frank has done one boring, unglamorous thing for 22 years. He saved first and spent what was left. Frank has roughly $610,000 invested and an emergency fund covering 18 months of expenses. If Frank's income stopped this Friday, his life would not change for a year and a half. Frank earns less than half of what David earns. Frank is the wealthy one. Frank is free. David is performing freedom while quietly renting his entire life from the bank. Here's the question the industry never asks you to consider, because the honest answer costs them money. Which of those two men is winning? Every commercial you've ever seen says David. Every restless 3 a.m. calculation in your own head says David, but David can't sleep, and Frank can. And notice, I'm not telling you Frank is a saint or David is a fool. David may have had medical bills, a divorce, a stretch of bad luck that emptied the cushion through no fault of his own. That happens, and it's real, and we'll be honest about that later. But for an enormous number of people, the David life isn't bad luck. It's a choice made 500 small times a year, mostly unconsciously, mostly to look like something for an audience that isn't even watching. Because that's the engine underneath all of it. The belief that money's job is to signal, to prove, to show the neighbors, the in-laws, the people from high school, the strangers online that you made it. And the second money becomes a yardstick you hold up against other people you've lost automatically, mathematically, permanently, because there is no top of that ladder. There is always a bigger house, a newer truck, a better-looking vacation. Someone, somewhere, is always one rung higher, and the algorithm in your pocket will find them for you 100 times a day and put them on your screen. You don't need more money. You need a better plan for the money you already touch. And the first piece of that plan is learning to tell the difference between the man who looks free and the man who is free, and deciding on purpose which one you're building toward in the years you have left. So if David's problem isn't income, and it isn't, what is it? Let me give you the answer in one sentence, and then spend the rest of this block proving it. Your sense of how you're doing financially is not based on what you have. It's based on the distance between what you have and what you expected to have. Close that gap, and a modest life feels abundant. Let it widen, and a fortune feels like failure. This is the thing the industry will never frame for you honestly, because it's the one variable they spend billions of dollars trying to push in the wrong direction. Every marketing department on earth is in the business of raising your expectations, quietly, constantly, so that whatever you have feels like not quite enough. Think about your own definition of normal. When you were a kid, normal was probably one car, one bathroom, a vacation that meant driving to see relatives, a family that had a second car and went somewhere with a beach. Those people were rich. Now think about what registers as normal to you today. 2 cars, minimum. A kitchen renovated within the last decade, or you feel a little embarrassed. A vacation that involves a plane. Notice what happened. Your income went up over your life, but your definition of just getting by climbed right alongside it, step for step, sometimes faster. And a definition of enough that rises as fast as your income is a definition that guarantees you will never, ever arrive. Here's the math that should bother you. Suppose at 45 you earned $80,000 and felt stretched. You worked hard, and by 55 you earn $130,000. That's a 62% raise, the kind of progress that should feel like winning. But if in those same 10 years your idea of the life you should be living grew by 70%, you are now objectively richer and subjectively poorer. You feel further behind at $130,000 than you did at $80,000. You did everything right and the finish line moved further away. This is not a feeling. This is arithmetic. The goalposts moved, and they moved because something moved them. And what moves them more than anything in human history before it is the device in your hand. Your grandparents compared themselves to maybe 30 people, neighbors, co-workers, the folks at church. A handful of those people were doing better, and that stung a little, and then they went home. You compare yourself to a feed engineered by the most sophisticated software ever built, whose single job is to show you the highest, glossiest, most enviable moment from thousands of lives, edited down to the 3 seconds that make you feel small. You are not comparing your life to your neighbor's life. You are comparing your entire ordinary Tuesday to the best 4 seconds of 10,000 strangers. Nobody can win that. It's not designed to be won. It's designed to keep you scrolling, and a content person doesn't scroll. Let me make it concrete again. Take Linda, 58, a school teacher. By every objective measure, Linda is fine. Pension on the way, house nearly paid, $190,000 in a 403B. But Linda spends 45 minutes a night watching women her age on her phone, the kitchen islands, the trips to Tuscany, the effortless retirements at lakefront homes. And every night Linda goes to bed feeling like she failed at something. Her finances didn't change. Her expectations changed. The exact same bank balance that would have felt like triumph to her 30 years ago now feels like a quiet, grinding disappointment. And not $1 of that disappointment is real. It was manufactured. It was sold to her, free of charge, 45 minutes at a time. Now, I want to be honest, because this channel doesn't traffic in easy answers. Not all of the gap is in your head. Some people genuinely earn too little for where they live. Some carry medical debt they never chose, or are raising grandkids, or got laid off at 56 in a market that doesn't want to hire them back. That gap is real, it's structural, and no amount of gratitude closes it. I'm not going to insult you by pretending otherwise. But here's what's true for most people watching. And you'll know in your gut whether it's true for you. A meaningful chunk of the behind you feel isn't a shortage of money. It's an inflation of expectations you never consciously agreed to. And here is the genuinely hopeful part, the reason this matters. Your income is partly outside your control. The economy, your industry, your age, the market for what you do. You don't fully own those, but your expectations? That's the one lever that is almost entirely yours. You can't always earn 30% more. You can, starting tonight, want with more intention. And that single adjustment changes how rich you feel faster than any raise ever will. If you fix this, everything changes. Because every other financial decision you make flows downstream from the size of the gap you're carrying. So we've established the disease, the moving goalpost, the manufactured gap. Now let's talk about the engine that runs it. Because expectations don't rise on their own. Something fuels them. And once you see the fuel clearly, you'll never spend the same way again. Here it is. Almost every dollar you spend falls into one of 2 buckets. Bucket 1. This makes my life or my family's life genuinely better. Bucket 2, this makes me look a certain way to other people. That's it. Food on the table, a reliable car, a warm house, a trip that fills your kids with memories. Bucket 1, the upgrade nobody needed, the brand on the bag, the kitchen you renovated, mostly so it would photograph well when people came over. Bucket 2. And the tragedy of modern financial life is how much of our money quietly drains into bucket 2 while we tell ourselves it's bucket 1. Now I want to hand you the single most liberating idea I know about money, and I want you to actually feel it, not just hear it. The audience you're spending all that bucket 2 money to impress, they're not watching. They are not thinking about you. And they're not thinking about you for the simplest, most human reason in the world. They are far too busy worrying about whether you are impressed with them. Think about the last time you saw someone pull up in a gorgeous car, a real head-turner. What did you actually do? Did you look at the driver and think, "What an admirable human being"? Of course not. You looked at the car, and if any thought formed about a person at all, it was a flicker of imagining yourself behind that wheel, picturing how you'd look, who'd be impressed by you. The driver was invisible. The driver is always invisible. We don't admire the people with the nice things. We use their nice things as a screen to project our own fantasy of being admired. Sit with what that means, because it cuts both ways and it sets you free. Every dollar you have ever spent to be admired by strangers was spent on an audience that was looking straight through you at their own reflection. The neighbors didn't notice the new truck the way you imagined. Your in-laws didn't recalibrate their respect when you redid the deck. The people at the reunion clocked your watch for half a second and went right back to wondering if anyone noticed theirs. You performed for a theater you believed was full. It was empty. It was always empty. Let me make it concrete. Take Mark, 49. Mark traded a perfectly good paid-off sedan for a $68,000 SUV, financed at $940 a month over 6 years. When I asked him why, and people are honest if you ask gently, it came down to a partners meeting where a younger colleague rolled in with something newer, and Mark felt, in his words, like the guy who got left behind. So he spent $68,000, plus around $9,000 in interest, to fix a feeling that lasted one afternoon. Here's the brutal part. That colleague has not thought about Mark's car a single time since. Not once. Mark bought $77,000 of invisibility. And every month for 6 years, that $940 leaves his account. $940 that could have been $940 of independence, of cushion, of sleep, to settle a debt to an audience that was never seated. Now, the honest caveat, because I won't pretend this is simple. Some bucket 2 spending is fine and even good. You're allowed to like nice things. Wanting to look professional, dressing well for work you care about, buying something beautiful because you love it. That's not the trap. The trap is when the primary driver is the imagined reaction of people who aren't paying attention. The test isn't, is this nice? The test is, if no one I knew would ever see this, would I still want it? That single question separates bucket 1 from bucket 2 more reliably than any budget app ever made. On a deserted island, with no one to perform for, your spending collapses toward what's actually useful. And the distance between what you'd buy there and what you buy here is the exact size of the tax you're paying to strangers. And here's why this matters so much more after 40 than before. In your 20s, you had decades to recover from bucket 2 mistakes. Now, every dollar carries the weight of time. A $77,000 status purchase at 49 isn't just $77,000. It's the 15 or 20 years of compounding that money could have done before you need it. The price of impressing the empty theater isn't the sticker. It's the future you quietly handed over to pay for it. You don't need more money. You need to stop spending the money you have on an audience that isn't there. So, we've torn down the false target. Now, let's build the real one. Because once you stop spending to impress an empty room, a question rises up that nobody prepared you for. Then what is the money for? Here's my answer, and it's the quiet center of everything. The money is for independence, not for things, for freedom. And independence isn't a finish line you cross when you hit some magic number. It's a dial, and you turn it up $1 at a time. This is where most people get it wrong. And they get it wrong because they think in all or nothing terms. They believe independence is binary. Either you're rich enough to never work again, or there's no point saving at all. So the person who can only set aside $40 a paycheck thinks, what's the point? $40 won't change anything, and spends it. But independence doesn't work that way. It's not a switch, it's a slider. Every single dollar you save moves it, however slightly, towards you. Let me reframe saving in a way that might genuinely change how it feels. You've been taught that saving is delayed gratification, giving up something today for some abstract reward decades away. That framing is why saving feels like punishment. So flip it. Don't think of $100 saved as $100 you'll spend later. Think of it as $100 of independence you are buying right now, today. The moment that money lands in the account, you own a little more of your own life. You can survive a little longer without a paycheck. You can say no to a little more. That's not a future reward. That's a thing you possess tonight, and it lets you sleep tonight. Saving stops being sacrifice and becomes a purchase. Maybe the only purchase that reliably makes you feel better the longer you hold it. And the engine that turns those dollars into real freedom is the most boring, most underestimated force in all of finance: compounding. Let me show it to you plainly, because the numbers are almost offensive once you see them. Suppose at 45 you start putting away $500 a month, that's it, $500, into a basic low-cost index fund. Nothing clever, no stock picks, just the whole market, left alone. At a historical-ish average return, by 65 you've personally contributed $120,000. But the account isn't worth $120,000. It's worth somewhere around $370,000. You put in $120,000. Time and compounding handed you roughly $250,000 on top. You didn't earn that by being smart. You earned it by being patient. Now here's the part that should land hard for everyone over 40 who thinks they've missed the window. The greatest investor alive built about 99% of his fortune after his 60th birthday. Not because he got better at picking. He was brilliant at 30. Because by 60, the compounding had been running for 50 years, and that's when the curve goes vertical. The lesson isn't be a genius. The lesson is the genius matters far less than the duration. An ordinary return sustained for an extraordinary length of time beats a brilliant return you bail out of. You do not need to beat Wall Street. You need to outlast your own impatience. Which is why the strategy that wins is almost insultingly simple, and the industry hates how simple it is because they can't charge much for it. Spend less than you earn. Save the gap automatically before you can touch it. Put it somewhere boring and broad and low cost. And then, this is the hard part, the only hard part. Leave it alone for 20 or 30 years through every crash, every scary headline, every neighbor bragging about the hot thing you didn't buy. The cost of admission to those returns isn't a fee to an advisor. It's the stomach to sit still while everything in your nervous system screams at you to do something. And let me be honest, because this is where it gets real after 40. If you're 55 with little saved, compounding has less runway, and I'm not going to wave a chart at you and pretend 3 decades exist that don't. That's the genuine cost of starting late. And it's exactly why the industry's silence on all this for the last 20 years was so expensive for you. But less runway is not no runway. 10 years of disciplined, automatic, patient saving still changes a retirement, meaningfully, measurably. The second best time to start was 20 years ago. The best time remaining is the next paycheck. Independence isn't bought in one heroic move. It's bought in hundreds of unglamorous, automatic, almost invisible decisions. Each one turning the dial a little more toward a life that belongs to you. So you've decided independence is the target, and you understand the engine that builds it. Now we have to talk about the thing that destroys it. The silent killer that wrecks more retirements than any market crash ever has. It isn't bad returns. It isn't picking the wrong fund. It's your own behavior at the worst possible moment. Here's a truth the brochures bury in the fine print. The stock market doesn't hand you those compounding returns for free. There's a price of admission, and the price is volatility. The market will, with absolute certainty, terrify you on a regular schedule. It will drop 20% in a few weeks for reasons that feel like the end of the world. It will go nowhere for years while you wonder if you're a fool. That fear, that stomach drop, that 3 a.m. urge to do something, that is the fee. That is what you're paying for the long-term returns. And most people, right at the moment of maximum fear, refuse to pay it. They sell. They lock in the loss. They turn a temporary drop into a permanent one, and then they wait. And they almost always climb back in only after the recovery has already happened, having bought high and sold low while believing they were being prudent. Let me make it concrete, because this is the most expensive mistake in personal finance, and almost nobody sees themselves doing it until it's done. Take Susan and Tom, both 53, in March of 2020. They'd done everything right. 15 years of steady, automatic investing, around $400,000 built up. Then the pandemic hit, and the market fell roughly a third in about a month. Their $400,000 showed as $270,000. The headline screamed collapse. And Susan and Tom did the thing that felt responsible, felt safe, felt like protecting the family. They sold, they moved to cash, they stopped the bleeding, and for a few weeks they felt enormous relief. You know what happened next. The market didn't just recover, it came roaring back within months. But Susan and Tom were in cash, frozen, waiting for it to feel safe again. It never feels safe at the bottom. That's the whole trap. They finally edged back in over a year later, well above where they'd sold. That one emotional decision, made out of love, made out of caution, made for all the right reasons, cost them somewhere north of $100,000 in recovery they simply weren't present for. The market didn't take that money. Their behavior did. The crash was survivable. The reaction to the crash was not. Now hold that against the opposite story. Same crash, same terror. But imagine a couple who had decided in advance, while calm, that they would not touch the account no matter what. March 2020 hits. The number is horrifying. They feel every ounce of the same fear, and they do nothing. They keep their automatic contributions running, which means they're actually buying while everything is on sale. By the time the dust settles, they're not down $100,000. They're ahead. The only difference between the two couples wasn't intelligence or information or a better advisor. It was the ability to sit still when sitting still felt insane. This is the part the industry has every incentive to keep murky, because activity is how a lot of them get paid. The trades, the products, the let's reposition your portfolio in these uncertain times. But the honest data has been clear for decades. The more you tinker, the worse you tend to do. The investor who checks the account daily and reacts underperforms the one who set it up well and forgot the password. Your portfolio is like a bar of soap. The more you handle it, the smaller it gets. So the skill that protects your independence isn't analysis. It's temperament. It's deciding now, while you're calm, exactly what you'll do when the crash comes, because it will come, probably more than once before you retire, so that the decision is already made before the fear arrives to make it for you. And here's the honest caveat, because temperament isn't the whole story. Don't sell in a crash assumes you can afford not to. That's why the boring foundation underneath the investing matters so much. An emergency fund, real cash, enough to cover many months of life. Susan and Tom may have sold partly because they were scared, but some people sell because they genuinely need the money and have no cushion. So the market forces their hand at the worst time. The cash buffer isn't unsexy caution. It's the very thing that lets you hold your nerve. It's what converts "I'm terrified" into "I'm terrified and I don't have to do anything about it." You don't need more money to survive the next crash. You need a plan made in calm and the cushion that lets you keep it. So let's pull the pieces together, because by now you can feel the shape of the whole blueprint. Tell rich from wealthy. Shrink the gap between expectation and reality. Stop spending on the empty theater. Buy independence $1 at a time. And hold your nerve when the market tries to scare you out of your own future. 5 moves. None of them require a finance degree. All of them require something harder. The willingness to ignore almost everything the world is shouting at you. And right here, before I give you the final piece, I want to ask you for one small thing. If anything so far has rearranged something in how you see your money, if even one sentence made you pause, do me a favor and subscribe. Not for me. Because this channel exists to tell you the things the industry won't, and the only way these ideas reach the next person quietly drowning at 3 a.m. is if you help them travel. That's the whole deal. You hit subscribe, and one more honest conversation about money gets to exist in a feed full of people selling you the opposite. Thank you. Truly. Now, the final piece of the framework. We've talked about how to build wealth, but there's a question underneath all of it that determines whether any of this actually makes you happy. And almost no financial channel will go here. It's the question of enough. Here's the trap, stated plainly. You can do every single thing in this blueprint correctly. Save, invest, stay patient, ignore the neighbors, and still be miserable if you never define what enough looks like. Because without a number, without a picture, more becomes the default goal by sheer gravity. And more has no ceiling. There is no income, no net worth, no house large enough to satisfy a person who has never paused to ask what they were actually trying to feel. So the final move isn't financial. It's an act of definition. You have to sit down, ideally with the person you share your life with, and answer a question most people avoid for their entire lives. What does enough actually look like for us? Not for the algorithm, not for the reunion, for us. What's the house that fits our actual life? What's the income that covers our real wants with a margin that lets us sleep? What's the work we'd keep doing even if money were no object? And what would we put down tomorrow? When you can answer that, when enough stops being a feeling that recedes and becomes a target you can actually name, something extraordinary happens. The goalpost finally stops moving, not because you stopped caring, because you finally aimed. And here's the strange gift hidden in that exercise, the one the industry would never advertise. Desiring less produces the exact same feeling as earning more. Read that again. If wealth is the gap between what you have and what you want, then you can close that gap from either side. You can spend 30 years and enormous stress chasing the have upward, or you can spend one honest afternoon bringing the want into focus and feel richer by Friday. One of those paths cost you your whole life. The other cost you an evening and the courage to be honest about what you actually need. Now, the honest caveat, because we don't do fairy tales here. Define enough is not a trick to make a genuinely tight situation feel fine. If your enough is still beyond your means, no amount of reflection conjures the money, and I won't pretend it does. For some, defining enough reveals a real gap that demands real change, more income, less cost, hard choices. But for a great many people watching, the honest exercise reveals the opposite. That enough was closer than they thought, sometimes already behind them, and they spent years sprinting past it, chasing a number that was never theirs to begin with. And that sets up the question I want to leave hanging for the next video in this series, the one about retirement, and the single most dangerous myth about it, the belief that there's a magic number, that once you cross it, you're set, you're safe, you're done. There isn't. And in the next one, I'll show you why the people who retire genuinely free are almost never the ones who hit the biggest number, and what they understood that the high net worth panic cases never did. You don't need more money. You need a better plan and the courage to know when the plan has already won. There's a scene I want you to carry with you after this video ends. It's a Sunday morning, years from now. You're standing in your kitchen, not a magazine kitchen, just yours, holding a cup of coffee that's gone slightly cold because you've been standing there longer than you meant to. And you're doing the thing you've done 10,000 mornings of your life, a quiet bit of math in your head. But this morning, the math is different. This morning, the number you're checking isn't am I behind, it's do I still have to? And the answer you realize standing there in your own ordinary kitchen is no, you don't have to. You could keep working because you want to, or you could stop. The choice is actually yours. Nobody handed you that. You built it, one boring dollar at a time, while everyone around you was busy building a driveway full of payments. Now let me show you the other version of that morning, because this is the fork you're standing at right now, today, whether you feel it or not. Same kitchen, same cold coffee. But this version, you're 67, and the math in your head is the old math, the math you've run your whole life. How many more months can the income hold? The cars looked great. The vacations photographed beautifully. The neighbors were appropriately impressed for the half second they glanced. And none of it is here now. It all left your hands the moment you bought it, and what it bought you was a retirement spent doing the same anxious arithmetic you were doing at 45, just with less time left to fix it. The theater was empty the whole time. You performed for 50 years for an audience that was never seated, and the ticket price was the freedom you're now standing in your kitchen wishing you had. 2 mornings, same person. The only thing that separates them is 1,000 small choices, most of them invisible, most of them made on ordinary Tuesdays when no one was watching, and it would have been so easy to do the other thing. That's the whole truth of this. Wealth was never built in the dramatic moments. It was built, or lost, in the quiet ones. So before you go, I'm going to ask you for 3 things. Not for me, for the version of you standing in that kitchen. First, subscribe if you haven't, because the next conversation in this series might be the one that moves your morning from the second kitchen to the first. Second, share this with 5 people. Not 50, 5. 5 people you actually care about. The brother-in-law quietly drowning, the friend who jokes about money to avoid crying about it, the kid who's just starting out and still has every advantage of time. Send it to them directly. One honest message from you will land harder than 1,000 strangers' advice ever could. Third, leave a comment and make it a real one. Tell me which of these hit you hardest, or tell me the thing you've been spending on to fill a hole that money was never going to fill. You don't have to use your real name, but say it out loud, here, where someone reading it will feel a little less alone. That's how this works. That's the whole point. And then I want you to put the phone down and go look at your actual life, not the feed, the life. Because here's what I've learned, and it's the truest thing I know about money. The richest people aren't the ones with the most. They're the ones who finally stopped needing more. The goalpost moves until you stop chasing it, and the day you stop chasing, that's the day you're finally free.